The barrack opens at 6, you wake up around 5, it's open till 12 in the afternoon, then again you're inside locked up, then it opens again at 3 and shuts again at 6. So it's very long drawn out, very boring after that. The jail food is served twice a day, so you save it in some little bartans, eat it off obviously in the night. See, I keep saying this, and fortunately I'm one of those who has an opportunity to speak about my experience in prison. Many activists don't. Many women don't, and it's never very nice being in prison. There's a loss of dignity, there's a loss of autonomy, and there was a kind of extremely undemocratic way in which it happened to me, which I won't go into now. But I mean, it's a very isolating experience there, and I just keep telling people ever since I was released that when I was in college and grew up in 70s and 80s, we were part of POCL, and during the emergency, we were part of the movement to get the ruling party out in the city of Bombay and so many other places. Visiting prisons and doing prison visits was part of our political education as students and as young activists. Today that's not happening, and I'm just appealing to people everywhere that start this activity in your district towns and in your capital. Visit the prisons, find out what conditions people are living there, women are living there, Dalits are living there, minorities are living there, because a visit by outsiders will keep a check on the practices there. Are the health services okay? Is the food all right? These are the questions I think if citizens involve themselves would be really good. For me, I was in a barrack of, women and children. There were 33, 35 of us in a barrack. I was very fearful in the beginning because of the fact that my lawyers mentioned this in court because of the perpetrators of 2002 being in the male prison and we were in the women prison. I sort of instinctively felt I should just live a life of anonymity, and my safety lay if I was with other women prisoners rather than single out myself for any attention. And then it was okay. I mean, it was as okay for me as it was for others. It was uncomfortable, it was demeaning, all of that. But then something wonderful happened towards the end of July. I was brought to prison on 3rd of July. Is that the Adivasi Union of which I am a part, the All India Union of Forest Working People, started this. They were also extremely taken aback and shocked by my arrest. They had meetings across in Sonbhadra, UP, Delhi, and they decided that they'll start letter writing campaigns to me. So I started getting letters from villages in UP, in Jharkhand, in Chhattisgarh. And then other organizations like IDWA and other picked up. So at the end when I left, I got 2,700 letters when I was in jail. Those were a source of tremendous strength to me. So I just feel that I have, since I came out also, I'm writing letters to other activists who are jailed and who are serving much longer terms than I am in very unfortunate circumstances. And I really feel that a letter writing campaign is something which is very important, because the sense of isolation breaks, you have a connection with the outside world. There is a library in Sabarmati Women's Prison, but you have to struggle to get it open. And I had to even struggle in the first 8-10 days to get pen and paper to write. Once I started getting that, I started making notes and writing. Healthcare is a problem everywhere, not just in Sabarmati but in other prisons. You have a small dispensary within, but it's not adequate. That's why I'm saying that visits and monitoring is very important. It's not a question of redundant. I think everything needs to rejuvenate and transform. And that doesn't mean that the previous thing becomes redundant, but that you evolve from there. But yeah, we have to evolve and we have to become something else. So I don't use terms like redundant, useless, pseudo-secular. No, I would say that you take your lessons from there and you try and figure out where and how to ensure certain non-negotiables like equality, non-discrimination, collective efforts, diverse efforts, representative efforts. Do we have enough faces from the Dalit, Muslim, women sections? Do we have enough Adivasis? Do we have enough Muslim Adivasis? Enough Dalit? These kind of intersectionalities. These are the lessons we've learned while being part of the old and also attempting something new. So I would use words like transformation and rejuvenation. I think struggles will throw up the protest, right? So different struggles have thrown up different kinds and levels of protest. So I think the mere fact that you have something like a theatre collective happening in Trivandrum or in the different districts of Kerala, or you have the not just the People's Film Collective in Kolkata, but you've been having it for the last decade. Not just to have your Kolkata book fair, but that you have book fairs in districts in Bengal. You know, I think these are ways in which these are also struggles, these are also protests, because in those spaces you're seeing ideas and thoughts being discussed which are being crushed by the state. A state which is itself seeing a transformation which we've not understood. The way the Indian state has transformed is also something that we need to understand. It's not completely changed, because otherwise we would not be sitting here and talking, but there's an attempt to create a very hard state and a narrow state, which is also being resisted from within and from without. So in that circumstance, how protests take shape, how cultural protests take place, how intellectual protests take place, how organized protests take place, like for instance, Uber and Ola drivers, okay, or say Amazon workers, or your Swiggy and Zomato, the service industry, unorganized sector. How do you organize them? They don't even consider themselves as workers. So it's a very vast and complex area we are dealing with. And in this kind of neoliberal world, where you don't have just an assault from the socio-religious right, but also from the far economic right, which is fragmenting us, which is not allowing spaces, common workspaces. I think it is the struggles of all these various sections, including people like us, which will throw up different protests and different forms of protest. And it's happening. I think the fact that one single student or 5 students refused their degree at a convocation because of the individual giving it is a protest. I think the fact that when the ATS storms into my residence and assaults me, and I refuse to get intimidated and file my complaint with the local police station recording the violence before I'm taken forcibly to Ahmedabad, is a protest. So these are different ways in which individually and collectively things are manifesting. They have to take shape, they have to collectivize, and they have to also impact on institutions, which will take time. What was the farmers' movement? I'm asking you as media. That the farmers' movement that defied media blackouts, media ignoring, actually then burst upon the consciousness of the people at the worst time that this country has gone through, during the pandemic, during the lockdown. Okay, before that you had the most intrepid anti-CA, anti-NRC protests, inspired from Delhi, but that even came to East India, North India, Western India, etc. But the repression there was easier, because large sections of the protesters were Muslims, okay, and the community is paying for it. But it was that protest that inspired the farmers' protest. So let's not say it was scattered. It's just that it's very much more difficult to collectivize and be visibly collective. Even if there's a collective, it won't be visible. And for that, the media is responsible, because the fragmentation of the media itself is not allowing the kind of coverage of protests that we saw in the 70s, 80s, 90s, when you drew inspiration from each other's struggles, right? Today the media is regionalized, influenced, ideologically on the other side, different reasons. I'm not saying all is the same, but there is a fragmentation. So that therefore you, sitting in Bengal, you may or may not see something that is happening in Odisha or Karnataka or in the Adivasi area. Whereas earlier there were some spaces which were common within the media. So I think democratic movements have to overcome all of this, individuals and collective. And I think they're trying their best. The political opposition is weak, very often disappointing, but because we have no other option, it's a strategic choice. So given these circumstances, one has to forge ahead. At some point it has to come here, we'll have to see when. If the Supreme Court starts looking at the electoral bonds case, if the Election Commission's independence and autonomy is assured, if the media runs a campaign on the autonomy of the Election Commission, maybe some sense will dawn on our institutions. I said whether it's the People's Film Festival here in Kolkata, or whether it is there's a theatre collective called Natak in Kerala. I think these are very important initiatives because they are attempt at kind of rejuvenating and reviving people's culture. And whenever some of us who are concerned with an alternate politics, I think you can't have a politics without culture, right? So I think it's very important whether we talk about the reading habit, or we talk about film, or we talk about theatre. Let's not forget that radical movements in this country, mass movements, have also gone hand in hand with thriving culture in the past. And we've seen the deadening of that, which we saw pre-independence, post-independence, it was there. And now we've seen a kind of whittling away of that. So we've seen a kind of flattening out with just Bollywood and Southern cinema and this. And so I think there's a real need for theatre and film festivals like this.